What's up, everybody? Matt Parrino live in living color with Ryan Talbot, ready to go. It is Shout a Buffalo Football podcast brought to you by Value Home Centers. Customers can shop anytime at valuehomecenters.com. Buy online, pick up today, or find a huge selection of products that ship to your local store from the warehouse for free. It is good to see you in person, my man. How are you?
I'm doing well. A great day out there at practice with you, Matt. So a lot to get into.
We saw a ton. I know a lot of people are locked and loaded. They want to get to a lot of news nuggets that are coming out of practice today. Micah Hyde. I wrote up my observations over at Syracuse.com, NewYorkUpstate.com. You can go check those out right now. But we're going to start with Micah Hyde. It was a little bit of a scary moment out there today.
Yeah, I mean, we were right there, Matt, for the action when it took place. An errant Josh Allen ball. Micah Hyde goes up, tries to make a play on it. Stephon Diggs comes in, tries to rip the ball out, lands hard on the ground, and he's down on the ground for a few minutes. And, you know, you could literally hear a pin drop at St. John Fisher University. That's how quiet it got with all those fans in attendance. Down on the ground for a while, was able to eventually get up under his own power and limp off, and then was carted away from the stadium, from the field, but we've received some news since then.
Yeah. So when it first happened, my first thought was like, you know, Jordan Poyer, all of the storyline leading up to camp, you know, talking about coming and playing without that contract, potentially getting hurt. Could you imagine him sitting over there on the sidelines watching that happen? And actually, there was a point where Poyer was kind of upset, kind of like, you know, made a hand gesture like, you know, that's his guy, right? Micah Hyde. It was a hard hit. Apparently, Ian Rappaport is reporting that it's a minor injury, which is huge news for the Bills, huge news for Bills fans that kind of were watching that. But, you know, before we get too far along here, I mean, that gave the Bills an opportunity to shuffle the deck a little bit. Once Hyde went out, Jaquan Johnson, Damar Hamlin both got probably about equal reps with the first team there. And I thought that Hamlin played pretty well. I've been impressed. I don't know about you. Well, you haven't been here, so this is your first practice out here, which, by the way, we're jammed right in the middle of a couple dorm room cots. How does it feel to be back in a dorm room? Did you dorm at Bonaventure?
I did dorm at Bonaventure, so I'm not, you know, I'm kind of liking this. I enjoyed the dorm experience back in the day, so yeah, this isn't too bad.
Yeah, Pops Mafia, what's up, buddy? Thanks for jumping in here on a Friday afternoon, 2:30, 2:45. Practice just ended. I don't know if anybody's coming out for camp tomorrow, but the pad's going tomorrow, so that's going to be really good. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the show as well. Also, make sure go over and subscribe on the audio platforms, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple. Got a nice little series. It's going to be called Bills Camp Diaries, Bills Media Camp Diaries. That's going to be starting next week. But Damar Hamlin's impressed me all week because he's a guy that doesn't get a lot of fanfare. You know, former, I think it was a 6th round pick.
Yeah,
late day three pick. Yep, day 3 pick. And he's way back there on the depth chart. Behind Poyer and Hyde, you have Jaquan Johnson, we just found out because we did the research today, going into his 4th season, was drafted in 2019. And so he's really comfortable with the defense. You know, he's probably ready for an opportunity, but I think Hamlin's been really good. Had a big interception today. It was Case Keenum back there looking for Tavon Austin. What was your first impressions of Tavon Austin? What a big interception by Damar Hamlin.
Yeah, first, you know, Hamlin, like you said, there's not a lot of fanfare there because when you think of this Bills defense, 2 of the first names you think of just in general over the last few years have been Poyer and Hyde, one of the best safety combinations in this league. So when Hyde went down, first of all, obviously every fan was very upset about it. You don't want to see any of your premier players get hurt before the start of the season even takes place. But to Hamlin's credit, he came in. He made a play on the defense. He's made some plays in practices. As you've noted, Jaquan Johnson's been here a while. So, you know, to Buffalo's credit, they've drafted young guys who have been in here now for a few years, Hamlin entering year 2, that have learned the system. And now, you know, anything can happen in the NFL, man. So it's important for them to get reps like this. And when they do, to show up like Hamlin did today.
We're going to talk about 2 guys for the next 10, 15 minutes, one on offense, one on defense. But before we do, dorm life, you know, it's a little bit hectic, right? We're running all around campus. You've gotten a view of it today. You saw the cafeteria over at the field, the media press conference area. some people were giving me a hard time for a million water bottles in the back. I drank all of the waters. It's just, you're kind of going, you're moving, you're grabbing waters in different places. So they all kind of collected on the back desk there. But don't worry, I didn't waste any water. I drank it all.
Yeah, and you're right. I showed up at the field today with the water. It was gone pretty quickly. When you're out there on the track, that the sun beats down on you a little bit and you go through it quickly. Cafeteria, you're grabbing a few. So I agree. It's understandable why you had so many back there, man. I'm seeing some comments in here. Ryan looks way skinnier than I thought he was. I don't know if that's a compliment or not. Maybe I need to rearrange how I have my camera set up at home, but thank you. I suppose.
He didn't have a turkey burger. What'd you have?
No, they had some sesame chicken, broccoli, and rice.
Which players say that they have like a stir fry station in the players part that's really popular, and you enjoyed the sesame chicken.
I did, yeah. You mix it all together, and it's pretty good stuff.
Really soy saucy. That was my only complaint. Like a lot of soy sauce.
There are some pieces, absolutely.
All right, so let's start on the defensive side of the ball. Your first look at Von Miller, and let's start there.
Yeah.
Before I get into my thoughts, like what was your takeaway? Because I've been watching him all week. This isn't any surprise for me, but man, he looks different.
Yeah, I mean, about all of his pass rush moves in his arsenal, but he was like a freight train today at times too, just knocking over offensive tackles. One specifically that we'll get into here in a minute, I'm sure. But Miller so far is kind of living up to that hype, Matt. I mean, you signed a 6-year, $120 million deal, and I know, fans, it's not truly a 6-year deal. You can get out of it at certain points, but he's looking worth every penny based on the way that he was dominating today.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of dominate that like button. It's right on the screen underneath your the video player. Smash it and then hit that subscribe button, which is at the top. If you're watching there, we appreciate you all on YouTube or wherever you're catching the show. So let's set this up a little bit. So today, really, if we really want to get into the weeds, 4 projected Bills offensive line starters were not practicing today, or we're not with the first team today. Spencer Brown. He had a procedure in the offseason. He was part of team stuff on day 1, and then they backed that completely off. He's not participated in team drills since last Sunday. So he wasn't available. David Questenberry was over there. Ryan Bates is out. So you had Cody Ford in at right guard. Mitch Morse, the only healthy player at center. Then you have Greg Mance, who was in for the injured Roger Saffold, who still isn't practicing. And then Deion Dawkins, he was excused for personal reasons today. So that meant Tommy Doyle, year 2, round 5 draft pick, and it did not go well for Tommy Doyle today.
No, and listen, you're going against a first ballot Hall of Famer in Von Miller when the time comes, and you're right. Listen, it's midsummer, and I saw him on skates, man. I was not expecting that. I saw though some more athleticism from him. He did a split on the field at one point when he fell. So needless to say, Von Miller was having his way with this offensive line, especially at the tackle positions. But as you pointed out in your observations, a reason why the offense wasn't clicking today is Allen had little time. The defensive line was just kind of dominating the offensive line, which that's kind of to be expected when you're missing 4 of your projected starters.
The thing with Miller that continues to jump out, and Dawkins talked about it 2 days ago, is just even if you think you have some in the rep, you have some level of stability against him, he changes it so quickly. And I just felt like there was a sense of frustration on Tommy Doyle's face today. And I think he had a few of those moments where he probably thought, all right, I did everything right. He probably got into a stance quickly. He got his hand set. And, even if you make a good punch move at the start, Miller's so good that you could probably punch him back. He's felt that from the very best in the business for over a decade now, that he's got other moves. He's got other ways to win. He's had to have found those over the years.
Yeah, listen, if you're going to do this, I'm going to do that. And that kind of goes to his pass rush summit, where he meets with all those young pass rushers, and he talks about that. He talks about, if an offensive tackle does this to you, here's what I would do. Here's some swim moves. Here's some power moves. Here's an outside move. He has the full arsenal. And listen, Bills fans, don't worry about his age. That arsenal is looking as good as ever. I don't think there's any reason to be worrying about him at all in terms of slowing down. He still has a great first step.
Yeah, Pops is asking over on YouTube if Questenberry practiced today. Yeah, I did mention he was at right tackle. And when Von Miller was over there, it didn't go well for him either. I mean, it's just Von Miller's just that next level of athlete, but it's good. And Dawkins mentioned this. You get a chance in practice to go against the guy you're probably not going to see that.
Right.
Maybe save for a Myles Garrett, a Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, maybe, and a TJ Watt. I mean, that's probably the guys that can replicate what Von does. And I think Von does it in even more of a surprising way because, like Dion said, he's so like elastic with the way that he moves and bends his body that you don't see that from a lot of guys. And he's so athletic, even at 33.
Yeah, the bend is real. The way that he can move around for his age, the way he can move around in general. Bills fans are going to be wowed when they actually see him on the field come week 1 and during the 2022 season.
So the question that I get the most on when I do like national radio hits or if I go on other podcasts is the hype. Should the hype be real around Gabriel Davis, right? Like the guy went 4 touchdowns in the playoff game last year, and he's now wide receiver 2 and poised for a potential huge breakout season. But man, the guy that we're really just, I think to this point, not talking about enough, and he really flashed today, Isaiah McKenzie. And what we're seeing now with him is a guy that's totally comfortable in this offense. I know it's a new offensive coordinator, but it's the same wide receivers coach. I mean, Chad Hall has been there since Isaiah McKenzie got here. I think this first year, if I remember, it was Terry Robisky that was the wide receivers coach and Chad Hall was the assistant, but you get my point. There's so much familiarity. He really understands his role in the offense, and he's playing like it in this training camp. It's amazing. He made, I think, probably like 5 to 7 catches today, and a lot of them are, ho-hum. They're just like, you've seen McKenzie do it 100 times in this setting, in this practice setting before. But to me today, he really felt like, man, I think Isaiah McKenzie's ready to be that I'll be there for you whenever you need me kind of guy. It reminds you a lot of Cole Beasley, even though McKenzie plays and has a different ceiling. He plays differently than Cole and has a different ceiling than Cole. But in terms of what Cole meant, especially early on for Josh, I think Isaiah can be a version of that.
Yeah, listen, Isaiah McKenzie right now is oozing with confidence. The way that he is on the sidelines when he's hanging out with Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis, and then when he's actually in there, we saw Josh go to him a few times in a row, 2 or 3 throws in a row right to Isaiah McKenzie, and he's hauling them in. He's getting open. He's doing what you would want your starting slot receiver to do. And to your credit, you've mentioned this over the last few days. He is separating himself so much from the Jamison Crowders and everyone else that could potentially be in play for that job. And listen, that's nothing against Khalil Shakir, who's a rookie. I think Shakir in time is going to give him a real run for his money. But Isaiah McKenzie is looking like the real deal right now. He's looking like he's going to be a matchup problem for teams. And if you're into fantasy football meta, I would definitely spend a late round pick on Isaiah McKenzie.
So let me ask you this. Now that you were here, now that it's been 4 days, 4 straight practices that Jamison Crowder has missed, how has that take from a couple of days marinated with you? Because I still see, if I were to do a 53-man roster projection right now, and I was just kind of I was kind of workshopping that in the show that we did the other day, I'd probably have Crowder on the roster just because he offers you versatility. But man, I got to say, I'm really concerned for a guy that has had this issue before in terms of availability. We talked about it, like the soft tissue stuff, the lower body stuff. When that kind of stuff pops up for him, he really I feel like he misses more time than other guys just because of how much he's dealt with. Maybe he's ready to go tomorrow. Maybe he gets out there in pads. Maybe, he connects with Josh Allen a couple times. We move on to the next whatever storyline we want to talk about. But I think that there's reason for concern at this stage with Crowder. If you were Crowder's going to have a big role in this offense person.
Yeah. And at one point I was that person. And I agree with you that, his spot is not locked down right now. Now, do I still think he makes this roster? Yes, I do. I think he's had enough success in his career to show that when he is available, he's a guy that can be reliable in terms of catching the ball, yards after catch. You want your best receivers to make this team. That being said, availability is something that's so important to Sean McDermott and company, especially if you're going to be a receiver that maybe isn't going to be a big contributor on special teams.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's going to be on the bike continually over and over and over again and not going to be on the field, this is just going to hurt him the longer that this goes on.
Mm-hmm. You have a question. What was your takeaway on Khalil Shakir today? Didn't have a lot of action in the team stuff, but just watching him move, watching him go through drills. What did you think?
Yeah, natural pass catcher. I've seen some other people say that, but he uses his hands really well. There's never a bobble. Everything kind of comes very naturally to him as a pass catcher, which doesn't shock me. And I know comparing a college career to the NFL is night and day. But everything you saw out of Khalil Shakir going into the NFL made me believe that he was going to always be someone that could catch the ball, someone that was going to be a difference maker in the slot, or could potentially be. But yeah, I mean, he's lived up to the hype thus far, but today was a quiet day overall for him.
I want to get into, it's funny. Somebody asked me this on Twitter the other day about the comment was, my concern isn't what the Bills are going to do in the red zone. My concern is how they're going to get to the red zone, which I thought was curious. I thought that they moved the ball pretty well last year. And so we'll see, but they did a full field drill at the end of practice, which is actually rare, where they kind of line up the offense against the defense and ask them to go the length of the field and give them scoring opportunities. And we saw that. And McKenzie was clutch on that drive. It was Gabriel Davis who was getting a couple plays as well. But I want to go into one of the plays that, at the end of that drive, and it was red zone. I want to say that they were within the 10-yard line, and it was Diggs on Kaiir Elam, one-on-one. And that was an absolute fun matchup to watch. I mean, you could tell from the moment they line up from each other, Elam was way up on the line. Diggs got a little separation off the jump, but then it was there's a lot of physicality in the rep, ends up with an incompletion. Kaiir Elam kind of standing over Stephon Diggs for a quick second, and then the rookie tick in his brain, I think, started going. He was like, "Oh, here, let me help you up, sir. Let me get you back up." But what a rep for Elam in that moment.
Yeah, very good rep for Elam. Some fans probably want to know was it physical? Yeah, it was. There were some hands. Maybe it would have drawn a flag, especially Diggs versus a rookie. But I like the physicality that he's bringing. I like that he's showing confidence in his game and his skill set, Matt, because whether he's going to be a starter from week one out of the gate, which I think in any scenario he is, even if Trey's back, whatever the case is, the confidence has to be there, because you're going to get targeted a lot when you have Trey White on one side of the field, when you have Poyer, when you have Hyde, when you have Taron Johnson in the slot, one of the best nickel cornerbacks or slot cornerbacks in the league. He's going to get picked on a lot, and you need that confidence. You need that physical play at times, and I think that's what Elam's really going to bring to this team.
Mm-hmm. You could bring it to your team at home. If you like savings, go find the best rewards program that's out there. It's Value Home Centers, and customers earn points for purchases every day that will bring you more savings. Go check it out. You go to valuehomecenters.com. They'll have all the details for you. Veterans and active military earn double points on every purchase every day. Here's the keys, Ryan Talbot. Take the wheel.
Ooh, boy, where do we go next? Looking back at things, we've already kind of talked about the offense, a little bit sloppy of a day. Defensively, who are some of the people, in your opinion, Matt, that maybe stood out to you today?
It's a good question. Ed Oliver, and one play.
Good and bad.
Yeah. I was going to say one play, maybe not so much, but listen, you're just seeing it again. This is a guy that's ultra confident, ultra quick. His quickness it's a blur, man. I remember when he came in a little bit heavy as a rookie, and I've almost feel like it's been this kind of slow slog to get to this point where I feel like he's got his body perfectly tuned into what it needs to be for him to operate at ultimate, or what's the word I'm looking for, at optimal. There you go. See, you know what? You're in the dorm room. You're feeling the vibe.
That's right.
Optimal performance. And you can just see his footwork with the way that he gets on the line. He puts stress on the offensive line and those interior players every single time. Put a little pressure on Josh Allen, though, too, at one point.
Yeah, and going back to his rookie season where he looked a little bit heavier, maybe that was just because he had heard he's an undersized defensive tackle. He thought maybe he could pack on some more weight and still have that explosiveness, and it wasn't quite there. Now that what you see from him, He's in great shape, first of all. The pass rush arsenal is there. The first step is there. He looks like the real deal, Matt. And when you have him on the same line as Von Miller, and eventually you have guys like Daquan Jones and Tim Settle and these other defensive tackles next to him, one of the young guys on the opposite end, there's no reason for me to believe that Ed Oliver, and especially in those one-on-one matchups, can't dominate the opposing offensive lineman and really create havoc on the field.
Patrick Moran's creating havoc in the comments, and he said, I want to love something more than Matt loves transitioning into an ad read. And it's not something that I love. It's something that I'm trying to bring, like the entertainment value.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, it's,
absolutely.
I don't want to be another, like, let's pause for this word from our sponsor. I want to,
a smooth transition.
It's become a part of the show where people are like, I feel like you got to like give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Like, there's been a couple L's, like the value ones have been,
I think more wins than losses,
more dubs,
for sure.
All right,
for sure.
Where do you want to go next?
Well, let's see. I'm kind of going through your observations right now. Well, let's go with Marquez Stevenson, because we talked him up a little bit a few days ago. Mm-hmm. What did you notice from him today?
Let's get into Stevenson. Pops in the comments asks about how long we think Micah Hyde will be out. I think this is something that, he can maybe miss a couple days of practice depending on how long it lingers. The limp is going to be the part of it that's a concern to me, because you're not going to send him back out there until he's able to run, cut, move. I mean, this could be something that maybe lingers, maybe deep into next week, maybe into maybe he misses. At this point, why would you play him in the preseason game?
Right.
You probably hold him out of that. But I don't necessarily think we see him on the practice field until after that game.
I think that's a fair prediction. And that's all this is right now. We don't know how serious it is, how much it's going to be lingering, or if it's going to cause him pain. But obviously the Bills are going to take this slow. If there's one player on defense you don't have to worry about knowing the system, it's Micah Hyde. He knows the ins and outs of this system. He can step onto the field. Even if you wanted to keep him out of all the preseason, he would be fine come week one. He would know what he had to do. He would know his responsibilities perfectly. So that would not be an issue whatsoever. I think the Bills take this slow, let those young guys get their reps between Johnson and Hamlin.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of young guys, Marquez Stevenson, to your point, this is going to be something that if it continues to kind of be one of his bugaboos, it's going to be a problem. I mean, the guy's trying to make a real run at a roster spot. And, we'll see what happens in the game, how they approach kick return and punt return. If Stevenson gets opportunities, that could be a path at least, but we don't know. I mean, Matt Smiley didn't really want to go too far into it today. He didn't want to talk about who's up, who's down. I mean, they didn't address the position. Stevenson returned kicks last year. McKenzie returned kicks last year. Austin has a history where he's done it at times with punts. So they have a couple guys on the roster that can maybe be in the mix there. So we'll see. But to me right now, I don't think just strictly as a receiver, Stevenson is making the roster. This was another bad drop today. It was like, short pass out to the right. Just, you got to have hands there. And Matt Barkley was, threw a nice ball and he just muffed it and bobbled it.
Yeah. And we've talked about this. He's trying to get that last roster spot. You already have so many guys in front of you. You already kind of lost some of the faith, in my opinion, on special teams based on the way he played last year. He had some fumble issues. So if you're going to earn a role on this team, you have to step up at wide receiver and you have to build on your good days. And he had a good day a few days ago, but he comes back with a drop like this, and that's not going to help him. Listen, the Bills are tracking every drop, every catch, everything that takes place at this training camp. And they're going to say, oh, it was another day where he dropped a ball. You need to be able to be depended on when you're on the field. And if the Bills feel like they can't depend on him, they're not going to go out of their way to find a roster spot for him.
What's something that today, now being out here, walking around, seeing the team practice, being at the facility, what's one big takeaway from you that kind of stood out, maybe that we haven't talked about? It doesn't even have to be a football thing. It could be something that you've seen walking around campus.
Well, football thing, I will say, I already believe this, but the Gabe Davis hype it's real. He's good. You can see his confidence in getting open. You can see the confidence that Josh Allen and company have in him. I think that he's going to be in line for a really big year, Matt. And listen, he's coming off of a game of the ages with 4 touchdowns in a playoff matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, you can't have a game like that every week, but he's going to be someone that can be depended on the field to make big catches when the Bills need them, because you still know that teams are going to be focused in so much on Stephon Diggs that you need someone reliable opposite him, and that's what Gabriel Davis is really going to be able to do this year. As for the campus, packed. Kudos to Bills fans showing up. The tickets went fast for training camp, and these were not tickets that went unused. It was very well attended by the fan base today. It was not a Washington Commanders scenario where they had about 12 fans in attendance, which they blamed on parking issues and a lottery, whatever the case may be there. Really good turnout by the Bills fans, and it was great to see.
Yeah, it's just fun walking around and seeing people so excited to be back together, part of it, right? Like not having this for 2 years. You miss the camaraderie and being around Bills fans, and then watching, it's been a struggle at times for the offense, but I think just seeing all these superstars and, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Von Miller spent a lot of time with the fans this week. It's pretty cool. Let's dive into the tight end room a little bit, because Pops brings it up about Dawson Knox. He did have a couple of drops today. The one on the sideline was really tough, and he was running kind of vertically, kind of towards the left sideline. He was wearing that Guardian cap while he was running the route, which that's got to be tough. Hit his hands, probably should have caught it in a perfect world. In the end zone, pretty good pass from Josh Allen. He had it, and I don't know if a defender ripped it out, but that ended up not being a touchdown. Allen ended up running it in for a touchdown a few plays later. But I want to start with asking you, where is, and I'll chime in as well, where's your confidence meter at with Knox in terms of 50-50 ball, got to have it? Like, if the ball's in the air, a big-time moment, how much confidence do you have in Knox if the ball goes his way?
That's a great question, man, because it wavers. He is not someone that has shown sure hands. He made some big plays last season. He was atop the tight end rankings for touchdowns, but he still had some drops. He had some drops last year. He's had some drops this year. The confidence level will never be at the level of a Diggs or a Gabriel Davis, and maybe he'll never even be at the level of a Shakir based on very, very early returns. But he is still such a mismatch for opposing defenses that's always going to help him. He's always going to be able to correct mistakes, make another play down the road. But if it's a one-play scenario where you need him to come up and grab it, game on the line, I can't sit here and say right now that I am oozing with confidence in this guy.
I'm not either. And that's not to say it's a knock on Knox. I think he has made some big plays over the course of his career, and he has the potential to do so. But I just think there's also a difference. You bring up Shakir, a difference in fundamentally how you catch a football. Like, I was watching in warmups, and you mentioned Khalil, so I'll use him as an example. I'm not a football coach, but like, you could just kind of see when people are doing repetitive things, like going through a catching drill, you could see what guys like Stephon Diggs, Khalil Shakir, Isaiah McKenzie, Tavon Austin, they do. They were running this one drill where they were coming through. I'm bleeding here. Whoa. As they were kind of like running through, they had like a pipe square, and they had to run through the square, kind of turn around and get their hands up and catch the ball. And the thing that I really noticed about those four that I just mentioned is they'd run the route, get through. As soon as they turned their head, their hands were up, ready to catch the ball, right? So that's like fundamentally, like, you need your hands out in front so you can kind of move them around and catch the ball. From my perspective, that makes a lot of sense. I was watching Stevenson closely. He reacted once the ball was thrown to him. That's when he raised his hands. Yeah. And so, like, if you're raising your hands after the ball is thrown, you're not only going to have to raise your hands to the ball, but then you have to move depending on where the ball is. I just think that fundamentally speaking, that I think some of these guys, they just need to kind of go back to the basics.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting to think that I'm sure the Bills know this. I'm sure they do things. They do drills. It's not that the Bills are overlooking this, but I think maybe going back and really saying, hey, listen, focus on this. Have those hands up. Be ready for the ball. Don't put your hands up too late, because then, like you said, it's an adjustment. It's a timing issue. There's a lot of things that can take place, bounce off the hands, and that can lead to turnovers in a real live game situation. And it can in practice too, which we saw a few times today on deflected passes. So really good point. But yeah, Knox himself, listen, it's going to be interesting to see if he gets a contract here, what that's going to look like. I feel like the David Njoku contract really kind of messed things up a little bit for talented tight ends that maybe haven't put up the consistent stat lines. Njoku has the talent, hasn't been able to really show that. Knox has the talent, had a career year, so you'd like to think his contract's gonna be very similar to that, which it's a pretty hefty payday if you don't have your utmost confidence in him.
I see a comment in here. It can't be too easy to catch fastballs from Josh Allen. That's true, right?
Yeah,
because
100%.
He throws hard. But you know what it is easy to do while you're watching here on your phone or on your tablet or your laptop? Smash that like button. Subscribe to the show as well. It takes a quick second. We love that you're in here participating in the chat. Always so much energy, especially on these post-practice episodes. I want to stay at tight end. Pops mentioned it. He was out of practice today as well, so he's been kind of throwing some stuff in the chat. Great stuff, by the way. Tommy Sweeney. Mm-hmm. I wrote about him in the column today, and I think he's really interesting if he can kind of get going and maybe recapture some of that rookie season magic that he had. He was a really reliable target, especially when Knox went out early. Yeah. I thought that him and Allen were kind of starting to develop a little bit of a connection. And, Quentin Morris has had a nice start to camp, but I think there's an opportunity if they're going to keep 3 tight ends, which I think at their heart of hearts, if Sweeney can kind of stand out on special teams, which I think he's done it at certain points of his career, they probably want to keep 3 tight ends just in case. Sweeney can do a lot over the next month to earn that spot. And, if he has big preseason games, a lot like he did a couple of years ago, I think he's right back on the roster potentially.
I think that's a fair take. And listen, my first 53-man roster projection, I had Knox, Howard, and then I had Reggie Gilliam as that hybrid fullback tight end. But it is kind of important to have a third true tight end waiting in the wings in case an injury takes place. Because if the Bills were to lose Knox or Howard for a few weeks, then all of a sudden, in my 53-man roster projection scenario, Reggie Gilliam is not really a fullback anymore. He's got to be more focused in on being a tight end and the role and responsibility of that. If you have someone that's waiting there on this roster or that can actually step in and be a true tight end, that's big. So, yeah, Sweeney has a true opportunity. He made some plays today. The Bills can stash a tight end as well on the practice squad, obviously, and promote week to week. But I think there is a path or an avenue for Sweeney to make it if he keeps making plays in offense and he shows up on special teams.
I know this is a popular topic in the comments usually when we're doing these shows is talking about some of those depth offensive lineman players. And I was kind of impressed today with 2 names that I wanted to bring up on the show. If you're looking for people to watch closely in the preseason games, you're going to want to start with Luke Tenuta because this dude is an absolute mammoth of a man. He's huge. I mean, Doyle's huge, Brown's huge. Tenuta's like thick too. Like Brown is too, but I don't know. There's just something a little bit different when you look at Luke Tenuta. And he had a rep today against Shaq Lawson in the one-on-ones where I was like, wow. I mean, he absolutely shut down Shaq Lawson in 2-3 different spots.
Yeah. And one-on-ones are completely different than a live in-game scenario. No pads. Yep. But you're seeing the promise. You're seeing the raw athleticism. You're seeing little things of, okay, this is why the Bills drafted this guy because they went back-to-back with giant offensive tackles last year. So it wasn't necessarily expected they were going to go back to that well this year, and they did. And if he can show things like that too, it's a tough path to a roster spot. But he's going to be someone they're going to try to stash on the practice squad if he doesn't make the roster, someone that they can develop and bring along. And they do have a history of bringing along different players at different spots, obviously, in terms of developing them and then having them on the main roster sooner rather than later.
AJ Epinesa has been one of the hottest names at camp on the defensive side of the ball outside of Von Miller, obviously, and Oliver. He had another really great practice today. I mean, a couple really like shut down, like beat your man, get into the backfield. I think he had a sack as well. But there was 2 occasions where he was going up against undrafted free agent rookie Alec Anderson, who's playing over there at left tackle. And Anderson, not only did he hold up, but on one play, he absolutely stuffed Epinesa.
Yeah, Alec Anderson, in terms of value, is maybe their best undrafted free agent addition. He had a draftable grade according to a few different analysts. Fell through the cracks of the draft. Bills were able to get him. He has ties to this coaching staff. Relative on the special teams coaching staff, in fact. But from a skill perspective, he's showing what he can do right now. And I like that a lot. Can he continue to do that? Can he continue to show that he's worth being on this team going forward? Obviously not a main roster guy, in my opinion, right now, but practice squad. You get him on there, you bring him along. Maybe 2023, maybe 2024 is when he gets that opportunity.
My wife texted me. Just, I can't even repeat it. But, like, she knows that it shows up on my desktop when we're doing these shows, and she still texts funny stuff. So, there you go. Hi, honey. Where do you want to go next? We've got a few minutes left.
I see a question here about James Cook. I want to quickly point out Duke Johnson. He's a lot bigger than, in person when I was expecting. And early in his career, he was just that natural pass catcher, but he was really good running the ball last year in Miami. And I could see why based on his actual build in person. James Cook, I thought it was kind of a quiet day for Cook.
This was the quietest day for him.
It was. And again, it all goes back to the offensive line play. It goes back to the fact that they had trouble getting things going, but I saw him make some really nice catches and drills today. Again, you see those natural hands that could really end up paying dividends for the Bills in the regular season.
Indeed. All right. This has been great. Back in person for 2 days. We'll be live today. We'll get back at it tomorrow. So many people watching here. We'll go for a few more minutes. 370. I got to see the number. I'll bring up the actual YouTube number because that shows across all platforms. 260. Wow. Watching on YouTube right now. You guys are absolutely awesome. Smash that like button. Subscribe to the show as well. Let's get to the punters real quick. We saw Matt Hawk. He was the holder today. And listen, it's not even worth probably observing that because the guy is like, that's the reason he remained on the roster last year. Brandon Beane said as much. So he's not going to have any like screw ups in that department. If he did, I was joking with Joe Biscay. I'm like, is that going to lead your story if he like flubs one of these holds? And he's like, 100%. And so that wasn't the case, obviously, but we heard from the specialists today after practice. You were over there while I was watching, writing observations. Any takeaways from any of that?
Just that both of the Matts, Ariza and Hawk, they're working well together. They are, anytime that Ariza has a question, Hawk has been really good about giving that information. So even though it's a competition, Hawk, to his credit, is going out of his way to help mentor this young punter. Smiley had a lot of good things to say about both of them, kind of a neck and neck competition. Both are doing a good job holding. Both are doing a good job punting here early. My opinion only. I still think this is Ariza's job as long as he does not have a horrendous camp preseason. But to Hawk's credit, he's had a very nice camp thus far.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to bring up, we got a chance to talk to Matt Smiley this morning, the special teams coordinator, like you mentioned. And I asked him about Balin Spector because really Spector's only path to the roster, in my opinion, is if he's absolutely lights out on special teams. As soon as I asked him that, he said, yeah, he's been great. Made a point to go out of his way to mention that Terrell Bernard has also been a standout on special teams. So I've seen comments over the last couple of weeks about Terrell Bernard and how he's looked. I think he flies around on defense, but I think if he's starting to really settle in on special teams, that's where I think in year one, he can have his biggest impact.
I think that's the perfect way of putting it, because even though he was a third round pick in the case of Bernard, you still need him to step up on special teams. The Bills had 3 linebackers among their highest, snap counts for special teams last year. So he could step right into one of those roles.
And Andre Smith's going to be out for 6 games.
And, potentially that could be a Balin Spector role too. He could play a little bit of special teams in that spot, but both rookies are showing up very well on special teams right now. He had a lot of praise for Taiwan Jones. No surprise there. Jones, 34, 35. He said he just celebrated a birthday and still playing at a high level. So, this team, I think as long as Sean McDermott's here, this team is going to still covet special teams play, and that's going to factor into these final roster spots.
I think also I've been giving him a lot of love, but Dane Jackson really, really just solid throughout training camp. And I think sometimes you get to the point where a guy's so solid that, you just flip on to the next person and you don't spend time talking about just the just being reliable. And that's what he's been so far. Had a big play today, was up against Gabriel Davis early on in practice. Josh Allen tried to air it out, try to start things off in a big way. really sticky coverage, made a play, popped the ball up in the air. Poyer comes over and he actually intercepts it. But Dane Jackson, he's been really good.
Yeah, he had outstanding coverage. He was in the right spot. He timed everything perfectly. And like you said, if you can't come up with the ball, the next best thing you could almost do is bat it up like he did. And it went right into the arms of Jordan Poyer. So excellent coverage on that play. And I think first play of pretty much of that 11 on 11 that they were doing. So you're right. Allen was trying to start it off on a high note.
Paul Colangelo over on YouTube says he's been going to Bills games since 1964. Shout out to Paul. That is quite a run. Thank you so much for listening to us. Appreciate the kind words. Ryan and I actually both grew up. We're locals, right? We grew up in Buffalo. We come from families that have been decades-long Bills fans that have gone to games, that have watched this team as well. So I don't know. There's always a little soft spot in my heart for people that have been grinding at this for that many years, because this team at times has been tough to be a fan of, and to have that kind of commitment. And listen, if you're a Bills fan, it doesn't really matter about the ups and downs. It's just about being a Bills fan. It's kind of part of the identity. But shout out to Paul. That's cool.
Shout out to Paul. And you're right. Listen, we cover the team now, and I still get asked all the time, will you be excited if the Bills win the Super Bowl? I cover the team, but I'd be excited for my family. Right. I'd be excited for my friends that have been those diehard fans that have gone and sat in terrible elements and sat through some pretty terrible teams. So it's a lot different for us now, but it is awesome to hear about, the fans, these diehard fans that have been here for so long, watching the team in person. So, Paul, hope for your sake, this is the year, and for all the Bills fans that maybe this is the year that they put it together for real.
What's your right now? Let's do this final exercise before we get out of here. What's your receiving room at 53-man roster cut down?
Obviously, you have Diggs, Davis, you have Isaiah McKenzie, you have Shakir. I'm still giving a spot right now to Jamison Crowder. And I'm going to only keep 6, and unless I'm missing something, I'm going Tavon Austin.
So you're cutting Jay Kumro.
I am, and he's going to be a priority practice squad type of player. That said, he always seems to land somewhere when the Bills do part ways with him. He was with the Saints one year, but then they were able to bring him back, and it'll be tough, but I think that maybe they can kind of sneak him out of the practice squad.
Yeah. I think if I had to make my best guess, Crowder's on the team, so I go with your first 5, and then Kumaro instead of Austin, because I think they can get Austin back on the practice squad. Makes sense. I don't hate it. The reason I bring this up is because somebody was asking about Isaiah Hodgins, and listen, I think Hodgins is like a fun idea, right? Like, it's a fun player that his skill set is different than anything that anybody else does in the room. Like, that big slot, almost like a quasi tight end. And maybe they carve out a role for him like that. Maybe they end up saying, I don't think that would work. Like, keeping just Howard and Knox and then just having Hodgins being kind of some real quasi big receiver tight end role. It just wouldn't work. I don't know if he's that good as a blocker. So I think that he probably lands on the practice squad. And I think you're okay with that, because I don't think that anybody's going to be clamoring to pick him up. He just hasn't done enough. But his size is interesting, and at times he'll make a play here or there where you're like, all right, I want to think more about this. And so as long as you're doing that and making people think more about it, as opposed to Stevenson, who every couple of days is like, can this guy hold on to the ball? You'd rather be in the Hodgins spot than the Stevenson spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And the coaching staff will keep coming back to you if you make plays here and there, if you prove to be trustworthy and maybe have that upside. It kind of goes back to our talk a few days ago about Mike Love. Mike Love's found a way to stick on this practice squad and on this roster for years because he's been reliable. He's made plays from time to time. Maybe that is the role of the Isaiah Hodgins going forward until maybe something happens where he can get promoted and get a real opportunity in game. But yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
Thomas Falzone always dropping these super chats on us, kind of random and really far down the road, but hoping Kyer Elam can go against Jamar Chase and Tyreek Hill. Would also like to see Saran do more blitzing this year. Very excited for this year's defense. Now, I've not been able to kind of track down where he said it, but I did see one of those graphics that gets put around, and basically it said that I don't really want to say it, because what if he didn't say it? I'm not going to say it. Tune in tomorrow. I'll do the research. I'll make sure, and I'll find out if Tyreek said it.
Yesterday.
He did say this.
He did say that.
What was the quote?
Well, I can't remember it word for word, but we're going to be.
Why am I worried about playing the Bills twice a year?
No.
Okay.
I didn't see that one. Sorry.
Stay tuned for this. I want to track down where he actually said it. And if he said it, we're probably going to have to get a story up on that, because when you see this quote, you're going to be like, whoa. And then, again, I don't want to say it because like maybe sometimes people put stuff out there and the person didn't actually say it. And I don't know if I got it all the way down to the source. So hang out on that. But in terms of Elam, in your eyes, can he be the guy that you just lock up on one of the speedy guys? Like in Miami, it's going to be tough because Waddle and Hill are fast, but the faster guys, can he be somebody that can hang with him? I think that he's going to have that ability.
I think he'll have the ability as well. I don't think the Bills necessarily are going to have him do that, put him out on an island on his own, though, right out of the gate. I think you're going to have that safety help, depending on who's playing opposite him or depending on the matchups that you have elsewhere. But yeah, in time, I see nothing but confidence from Kaiir Elam. Yeah, and I like that about his game, because if you have a short memory in this league, Matt, even on plays where maybe you get beaten here or there and you come back, you don't let that phase you. By all means, he's going to keep getting better and better as a player. And I see, I've already seen some things just today in person from him, and then also from your observations in terms of the level of his play. He seems to be getting more and more confident, more and more comfortable each and every day here.
I'm looking this up. I'm trying to find out where he said it, but you see, like on this, it doesn't actually say where he said it, like where it's coming from. So, like, I don't know.
Right, if it's legitimate.
Because I do want to kind of like dive into this a little bit. I'll do the work on that tonight, see if I can figure out where it came from. But it definitely was not kind words about the Bills' defensive secondary. But he's also pretty tight with Jordan Poyer. So it kind of is, it feels a little odd that he would have said something that specific and that direct. But,
or given bulletin board material for a team you're going to see 2 times per year.
But I wouldn't be absolutely shocked, because this guy all he is about right now is talking about everything that comes into his head, which is smart. I mean, like the Athlete Podcast right now, it's booming. It's booming business.
It is. And I'm telling you, he has hyped up Tua to the fact where Tua better be the real deal this year right out of the gate, because if he's not, there's going to be a lot of people with receipts for some of the things that he said.
Indeed. All right. I think that'll do it. Thank you so much to Thomas, who brought the super chat. That's always super cool. Speaking of super cool, text VALUE, VALU, to 80692. You'll join Value Home Center's text program. You'll receive a $10 off a $40 purchase coupon, plus be the first to know about new products, new deals, new ads, new everything. Value Home Centers. Ryan Talbot, man, it's great to have you out here.
Excited.
You like flinched there. Did you think I was going to hit you?
No, I thought you were going in for a handshake. I'm like, all right, I'll go in for the handshake. I didn't know what was going on there.
2 for flinching. No, this is great, man. It's so cool when we're able to like cover these events together and have 2, 4 feet on the ground instead of 2. It's just a good time. Had fun today. We'll do it again tomorrow.
Looking forward to it.
All right. For Ryan Talbot, I'm Matt Parrino. This is the Shout Buffalo Football Podcast, brought to you by Value Home Centers. Hit that like button, subscribe before you go. Find us on all the audio platforms. We'll be right back here tomorrow afternoon. See you then.